Welcome to Swatches Livestream number 82. I'm Clint, and as soon as I check which channel Anna's on, she'll be here too. Hey Anna!
Hello, everyone.
So Anna, what are we looking at on this episode?
We are looking on the group 2 of our momentary challenge that is the Tomb of the Things. And people had to imagine they would be painting for a new game.
Mm-hmm.
And for a table game. How is it called in English? I don't know. Table game.
Board game?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So and do a very nice piece for us. Today we are looking at the sketches,
Yes.
and then there will be a second time we will be reviewing these. The next week we'll have group 1, the finals, and the week after we will have this group that we are reviewing today, the finals of. So looking forward to it.
Alright, well, we've already got quite a few people in the chat, and I appreciate you guys making the time to come by and join us live. I know most of the participants like to join in live so that they can get some immediate feedback. But for everyone else, especially, hey, welcome. Thanks for coming by. And of course, if you have some questions or comments that you would like to address to us, put at Swatches in your comment. It will flag it for me. And if possible, I will try to address it during the stream. Otherwise, I'm not going to be reading all of the comments so that I can actually focus on the reviews. All right, I'm going to jump over here to Photoshop. We will look at just a couple of announcements and give people time to join in before we start reviewing the artwork. Okay, I think we can get OBS out of the way here. And hey, if you haven't noticed, the art group over on the Facebook has over 5,000 members now. We accomplished that over the last week, and that's more than I ever thought we were going to have in this group. So that's pretty awesome. And I think we should do something special. I am still thinking about what that should be. I'm considering doing like a special 5,000 stream next week, not on Friday, but maybe earlier in the week. We could do, I'm not sure. So if you have ideas, toss it out to me. I have a few things that I'm considering, but I haven't committed to any of those. But hey, thank you for being part of the group. I hope you find it enjoyable, and I'm very proud of the Swatches community. Yeah. So Anna, what would be your suggestion? What would you like to do maybe for a special stream or to celebrate?
Well, we already talked about that. I would like to have something like putting out our most favorite artists and talk about their art and what makes them special and what we maybe could learn from them, or how to look in general at masterpieces of others, and how to analyze them. So this would be my interest, but I'm open for pretty much everything.
All right. Well, when I get a time to think about that and I decide on something, I will post it out on the Facebook group, swatches.group, if you want to go out there and join. And I will try to keep you up to date with that so that you can schedule to join that if you want to join that in live. Anything we do there, of course, will be recorded. So next week, Anna already talked about this a little bit, but we will be going back to Group 1, who had their first review last week, and we'll be looking at their finals. When we wrap that up, we will also be kicking off a new challenge, and Anna's been getting requests from you and input from the group out on the group. About what you guys would be interested in doing for the next art challenge. I will be looking at some of those submissions and seeing about maybe coming up with one on my own. And we will announce that next Friday and probably begin it this Saturday, the next day after that. And
Yeah.
if you are looking for consults, you can get a consult, a one-on-one video chat with me at art-mentor.com. So on that art challenge, you had some thoughts on that, did you not?
You mean in general? Yeah.
About next week. They still have some time to submit it, or have you already pulled in all of the ideas?
Yeah, this is what I wanted to just say when I said, yeah. I'd like to ask everyone who's listening it now, and it's just like, I have a great idea. I want to post it also. Please go to the Swatches art group
Mm-hmm.
and find the announcement of me where I ask for your ideas for future challenges. Because this weekend, I will wrap it all up and write it all on a PDF for Clint to have a look on. So who's not making it today or tomorrow probably is going to be missed by me, at least for this time. So
Yeah.
yeah, help
Oh,
us,
okay.
write something.
Yeah, if you're always like, man, they never do anything I'm interested in, well, this is your chance to let us know what you want to do. I usually like to do a mix between, okay, we do one that I came up with, and we do one that the group suggests. And so we do a mixture between those. Of course, if you like the channel, if you like the content we do here, if you like the community, please give the video a like. And subscribe, leave a comment as well. Those will all help growing the channel. Okay, we had 12 tickets as part of this group too, but I think we only had 10 entries.
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately.
these are the images that were submitted. And I've already gone through, Anna and I have both taken time to go through and look at these and jot down some notes to discuss. So we're going to just work through these, give some feedback about what we think could address some of the issues and how to improve the image, or at least give some direction going forwards. All right, first up is Brandon. Now, the goal was to create a fictional, an image for a fictional board game cover of the box. And it could feature one of two things. It could either feature a trio of heroes, or it could show the basically the monster boss at the end of the game. And there was a list in the outline of the characters that you could choose from. And one of them was the Naga character, the half human, half snake. And that is what Brandon decided to go with. So we're going to read his notes here. And he says, the wall and doorway are not too interesting. I would agree. That's a good summation. We're going to talk about some suggestions. Sure can. Thought about putting runes and making the doorway gold. Gold can be nice. Gives you a nice visual change from like the very dull rock to get like this shiny material. I intend to have various statues and treasure on the ground. I like that little variety besides just like gold coins. Looking forward to the critique. Okay, I think the Naga character is the most popular of the monster bosses. Maybe just because of that shape. They can be a lot of fun to design. Let's start with yours. I usually like to start with some of your input here, Anna, and we will go from that and look at some of the things that I thought about as well.
Yeah, so I like that he really gave some thought on different compositions. We have 3 very different compositions. They're not just alternations, but very different approaches. And I like that he experimented with that a lot. And he went for the third of his compositions. I also liked the first one, was interesting, but the third can work as well. The first thing that came to my mind when I looked at it was a little bit, I felt like she's bumping her head on the Tomb of the Sphinx title. She's also like bending forwards a bit, so it looks like she needs to squeeze herself in to fit there.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure whether the composition is working like that. So I'd experiment and see, okay, maybe putting the title down where her tails, we don't have to see all of her tail, so it can be also a little bit hidden by the title.
Yes.
And put her a little bit more up, that she's maybe looking down at us, so we could change a little bit the perspective on that as well to get a little bit more dynamic. Because by now we have a lot of unused space on the left and right on the top part of the painting. I jotted as well down that a wall looks, as he says, a little bit flat. There's no perspective, so we don't see the thickness of the wall. If we just say like total front, and it would be cool to see a little bit how thick this wall is.
Yes.
And yeah, I would have loved him to experiment a little bit more with different light sources. He tried that with the value studies, but I think he was too cautious. He can a little bit be more, I don't know, a little bit more direct, a little bit more,
Yeah. A
uh,
little more
I don't know.
dynamic.
Yeah, more dynamic.
Forceful almost with the light.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And yeah, the tail is a little bit, it's like folding around in a way that it exactly follows the frame
Yeah.
of the painting, and it has no form, it's just color. He didn't think about how it is bending much, and it's also not lifting from the ground, it's like lying flat everywhere. So it's a little bit boring. So I think with such a great thing as such a long tail, you can do much more to enhance this piece further. That's all.
Well, we actually, now Anna and I have not done much comparing of notes, just for a couple of minutes on one of the pieces, but those were actually a lot of my same observations as well, particularly with the composition, that we're not making use of a lot of the space on the image. So all of this space on the left, all that space there on the right, is giving you a little bit of context because, okay, it's a hieroglyphic wall, so it lets us have a Egyptian theme that reads better. But like Anna also said, it's completely flat to us. You know, if the wall had been going off at an angle, at least it would be drawing us in or giving some sort of depth to the image. But when you put it completely flat to the camera, it doesn't really invite you in. It just blocks you out of the scene. So even if it was a hallway that was doing this, it would draw you into the scene because everything would be funneling your attention to the character. That said, it might not be a big deal once you make some of the other suggestions. And I just did some composition changes with the main things I looked at. So before stream, I went and grabbed, I'm going to size this down just. Okay, so that fits a little better. I painted the logo out because same thing. I would put the logo at the bottom. There's no real good reason it needs to be at the top if you're also having the main character on the top of the image. Then you're just making it too cluttered there. And the bottom isn't doing anything particularly useful. There's nothing critical in that area. So we'll just put the logo down there. So I painted that out, and then I made her about twice the size because there's no reason not to. I mean, we've got the room. So we make her way bigger, and then we can put the logo down there underneath it. And we're making a lot better use of what we would call the real estate of the image. So that, you can just see very quickly kind of the difference that makes just as far as the impact of the character. So that would be a big deal. We want to also look at the character design. We want to look for more pop in the character. And you can think that as like, okay, more pop, that's a little vague. So let's talk about a couple of specific things. Over here on this character, they actually did some good stuff with this other Naga character. And I'm going to suggest making more use of a dynamic silhouette and using more sharp things like looking for triangles. And they don't have to be perfect triangles. That's not necessarily what we're talking about. It doesn't have to be like your equilateral triangle. It's these long pointy bits. She's the evil, the evil monster boss. And so we want her to be aggressive. And so we have pointy things here. We have pointy things here. We have her hair basically becoming a pointy thing. We have pointy things on all of these. We have pointy things on her armor. She's an aggressive, deadly sort of character. And she also just has more accoutrement. She's more interesting to look at. She has better variety of shapes. Here, these are all very rounded. And she feels more like a minion rather than boss. She doesn't feel as deadly as a boss should be. So going forwards, this can work as your general design. I would suggest making these compositional changes. You don't need to restart the image. The overall pose works. Although I would suggest moving this hand probably over a little bit so that it is free of the body, and that way that silhouette reads a little bit better. Otherwise, this is sort of a muddy silhouette where it all just sort of runs together in the overall form or shape of the body. Also look for some ways to give some more Egyptian look to the design. Can we give it some sort of headdress or tiara or headpiece, something that is more Egyptian? We also wanting to bling her up a little bit. Let's give her some more gold. We've got this one little chain thing hanging down. Okay, that's a good start, but give me a lot more of that. We want to make her more deadly, and we want to make her richer. So those can really be some things to consider. I also thought making a couple adjustments, like you can leave the wall there. Okay, cool. But let's maybe have a broken pillar over here that's kind of laying over. We've got some broken stone pieces. That also allows us to slightly cover up some of this painting. The painting was just a little too perfect. Like it was completely intact. There was nothing covering it up, and it had room all the way around it. We want to cover it up a little bit so it's a secondary element in the background. And I would consider even doing like some ferns. Maybe there's some sunlight or part of the roof is caved in, and we've got like some vines hanging down. And we've got like some ferns and stuff growing. So it's this sort of overgrown pyramid place. Just something a little different. Shake it up a little bit from what we've seen before. And lighting wise, Anna, how would you suggest he go about perhaps finding or discovering a better use of a lighting and how to make it more dynamic?
Well, if it was my piece, I'd think about different light sources. So, being the main light source, I would first think, what is my main light source? Is it coming from directly from the top because there's a hole in the roof or something like that? Or roof, there's no roof probably, in the upper part. Is it a torch? Is it torches that are around her? Is it glowing crystals that are diamonds or something that are lying around, that are magical or something? Is it her own magic? Is it the eyes of her? So I'd experiment with different main sources and see how they work. If I find a couple of main sources that I like considering, then I'd think about a secondary light, maybe a backlight to get a rim light, or to offset cool or warm lighting with the opposite kind of lighting, coming from a different direction, fill lights, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I would not yet think about, and this is bouncing from there and this is bouncing from there. Just general, what is my main light, and then maybe the secondary light. And the rest comes after.
This is one of those images, this sort of project, part of the outline that I didn't mention earlier, in case you're joining in and you didn't see the original outline. This should be more colorful and fun. It's not a horror, it's not dark, it's not gritty. So we want to make sure that we light it so that it has that sort of family-friendly adventure, it's kind of like this scene over here. It's kind of like your Warcraft image where, yeah, it's fantasy and it's dark and deadly, but it's also very colorful at the same time. It's not real realistic. So with this, we want to make sure that we're not getting too dark, but we do want to play up those colors a little bit. And it's sort of what Anna's saying, which is you're thinking in big terms. Like, okay, the main light source is this color, the background is this color. You're looking for very simple separations between planes of the image. Basically, we have her in the foreground, the wall is sort of your midground, and then we have the background. And you want to think in terms of like light, medium, and dark. Which one's light, which one's medium, and which one's dark. And I would suggest doing some variations that way. Is she lit? Is the wall medium? Is the background dark? And you could really do them in almost any variation, and it would still work. because the values just would work off of each other that way. Then you also move to the color and say, well, which one is what, predominantly what color? The other plane is predominantly what color? The next plane is predominantly what color? And this goes true for this image and the other ones we're going to look at. But that would be my feedback for Brandon. Yeah, I think you should be able to tackle this. Make sure that you're going back to adjusting the composition and making some of those changes, making the snake tail have a little more motion in it. Oh, I also thought like you could do like some cool curves with it or something. Might be interesting. And then after you recompose it, then go back to your value studies and look at doing some more dynamic ones, and then go to the color studies as well and do that. Okay, well, wrap it up there. Don't save. Nope. Next up, we're looking at Gabor. Okay, Gabor says, I don't shoot or look for pose reference until I'm sure of the composition, so I put some initial design studies in those boxes. Okay, I do appreciate you telling me that, and I often work the same way. I will sketch out until I'm happy with the general layout and pose, and then I will go photograph what I need after that in order to just tighten up the drawing. So, okay, I understand. The main problem is the staging. Making the snake lady prominent and the minions visible and readable and have a good value structure and separation of planes at the same time. I'm also having a hard time to design good characters. I really like some of your studies that you had going on here. And this is another one that I think it basically comes back to more of the composition issues. Because a lot of it's actually working. What was your impressions of this one, Anna?
Yeah, for me, it was the same. I really liked the idea and the pose and the composition in general. I just felt like for the game with the title in the middle being centered, the other one he did also a value study for would maybe work even better. For the purpose of the challenge. But if he sticks with the one that he had, the problem I would have with is that first, I don't know what she's doing with her hand. There is no like a magic, or she's not raising or doing something with it. So it looks to me like she was summoning the title, which might work, be cool, but then the title is a little bit out of the position because they're not connected very well with each other. So I'd have it then more, up and a little bit larger probably. So
The title?
there's the title,
Okay.
yeah. But so that she's summoning the title, maybe making her hand glow or something, and then it's two of the things or something. Could work. It's a good idea. So this was my first impression. I also like the lighting direction he's going with this light beam, and I love light beams, you know that. Light beam in the background into the darkness, showing showing some of the creatures there, the mummies that are coming towards us. It is a good mood, good atmosphere he created here. I'd push the Dutch angle a little bit further. I think he implemented it in the fore and midground, but the background is not following it.
Yeah, that does seem a little odd.
It's a little bit.
For people that are actually not aware of that, Dutch angle is where you get the entire scene and you get everything in it and you tilt it. Right? And they use that in film a lot if they want to make something feel a little odd or unnerving, or if the person's sick or crazy, they'll tilt the camera like that. And so we have these walls and we have her all tilted, but most of the guys in the background are not following the same amount of tilt. Okay, go on.
But this was what I wanted to say, that part of it is tilted and parts of it are then not tilted and following a different perspective. I would just try to make this a little bit more harmonious with putting a grid on top or something. I think he also has a 3-point perspective going on here. So, for example, the pillars on the left and right should then move towards each other and not away, because those in the back are also moving like more towards each other. I have the feeling that they're going up like that. So with a grid, it would be more understandable on where to change the angles.
Yeah, he could probably even force the perspective a little bit more. Just make it a little more heightened in order to kind of pull out that effect. I think you were saying that these would be kind of going more like a little more that way. Okay. Yeah, another one, the overall scene, I think works. I would agree that if you're going to do the Dutch angle, we probably need to tilt these guys a little bit more to sort of match up with it. I did another similar, just recompose to try to make use of some more of this space. That most of this stuff down here isn't really doing anything for us except for the title, so we'd leave that there. A lot of this up here, not doing a lot, and so I made him a little bigger. I thought he could be bigger. There's no reason that he doesn't necessarily need to be that big. And then I made her bigger, pulled her to the camera more, so you can see that difference. And we're just trying to fill the frame more with the characters. Put that back on here. And then with her hand, this is kind of a weak thing. We want to show her as she's got her hand up, and there's more action, there's more emotion, and there is a better silhouette from the hand. So we're going to be looking for something more in that line as far as kind of what the shape of the hand is doing. And then I did a little paint here to adjust. The hand seemed like it was maybe a little too far up, and the arm is getting too thin as it's running to the hand. That'd probably be something that you would notice and do a little correction after you got the photo. But I would suggest just maybe dropping down a little bit and watching kind of the shapes there. And then that back arm was very passive. It was very down low and not real commanding. So I would think about perhaps moving that up a little bit so it's just balanced out a little on either side with the arms. Getting more of the twist from the tail back here in order to help keep you in the image, kind of blocking off that corner. And that also allows there to be some overlapping with that background character. If you're doing this, then you actually can move these guys up a little closer, like you can see there. And we could probably have another character or two that's slightly more predominant than just the meager guys in the background. I think the lighting's pretty cool, but we will want to think about the value range, that this character has access to the full value range of light to dark, but everything in the midground needs to have lighter darkness. Everything reduces in value as it goes back. And then everything in the background is reduced more than that. And it's reducing to like the medium light range, which still allows you to have plenty of saturation, but it's not going to get as dark as her. Also with the hand, Anna, I was thinking kind of the same thing. It's like she's got this great pose and she's putting a lot of feeling into it, but it's not enacting anything. So
Yeah.
I was like, you could do like the glowy hand, like she could be using some sort of power that's making her hand glow, or what else would you do in order to give that a little more intro, so to make more sense about why her hand's up there like that?
Yeah, maybe it's the command for the creatures in the back, and their eyes or parts of bodies glowing in the same color, to make that connection, so that you say, she's commanding them to attack. Um, yeah. I mean, usually you would point with one finger or something like, go there, but she's more, I don't know. I think it would work to have that also a commanding gesture. So like, rah, I want it all. She's grasping for that. Give me that. Go there, give me that.
Yeah.
So I think it would work.
So yeah, just even a glowing hand or a light coming off of it could be good. You could do that. The classic zombie creatures have the glowing eyes and the color of her magic in order to show the connection between the two of them. And I also am more of the fan of some of the silhouette going on with your sketch down here of the character. This lady just seems a little bit weaker. Could we not give some more interesting shapes? I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be super Egyptian, but even throwing some like spiky bits on there would be nice. And I also added a bit more body to her. She's like super lean, so I just thickened her up a little bit, gave her a little bit more chest, gave her a bit more hips, beefed her arms up a little bit. I think it just makes her end up feeling a little more threatening. Because right now she's a bit too waif-like. I get she's probably a magic user, but if we do that, we're also looking for maybe some places to have pops of color. A lot of this is running in the same range, which is good. We basically have an analogous scheme, but you could make it a slightly more discordant, which is basically what you have here. Everything's running in the same color except for one color that does not fit. In this case, you could have like that green, green in her eyes, green there. Maybe she has like a green stone in her headdress. Maybe she has another green stone, part of her other, armor and stuff. So that would be an idea just to play with a very simple color like that. I like the controlled lighting, just hitting part of her across there. That's pretty cool. And you could do the same sort of thing with the characters in the background. Like maybe this front guy is being lit, so he can stand out from the background because he's actually being lit, but most of the other guys are more silhouetted. Okay, we got to be moving along. Gabor, that is a cool piece. I like what you got going on, and I look forward to seeing what you do in 2 weeks. Next up is Grace. You had some positive thoughts on this one earlier, but let's, go ahead and read this first. The first composition that I did was my favorite, so I spent more time on it even at the sketch stage. I actually found the lighting direction image after I had already done the comp without realizing how similar it was. I decided to go with the similarity, torch in hand, grasping at treasure, but with a very different character. I combined value studies 1 and 3 for the color studies, and I didn't really have time for the color studies, so I left the combined value studies for the main concept sketch. So let's pull up to the concept so you can kind of see what she is running with there. The upward view, reaching for the treasure. We got like the combat scene, and then we have the one that's basically them exploring and went for basically the treasure scene. So what were your thoughts on this, Anna?
Yeah, so I really, really like this one. I think what she really did well is the choice of perspective and camera angle. It is a very engaging piece. The characters are very clearly standing out. Even though she put a lot of lines for the sketch, you can still understand most of it very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So she did pulled off that very well. I like the value studies she did. They are all a little bit different, and I think she chose the strongest one as well. She also has very great refs. I like the one for the pose reference, especially that she put up in some 3D program. She has good lighting direction ref, and you see that she knows what she has to do.
Mm-hmm.
She knows the process already really well of doing a piece like this. Two minor things. One thing would I change the size of the crystal because she's already seeming to touch it. I think it's more interesting if you are not yet touching it because people are like, is she gonna get it or is she gonna get it interrupted? So like in the lighting direction piece, so having a little bit smaller or more away from her would be a little bit more engaging. I'm not sure about the pose of the left guy. What he's just standing there, or I'd like to have something more engaging. The one on the right is okay. He's preparing for attack. The one on the left, I can't make out. He's just so a little bit hunched forward, but not. Yeah, well, I'd work on that. And some of the mummies are also. They all have the same zombie-like pose. I'd like to have more variations on their poses. And the last thing is the color studies. I think it's good that she did different color studies, but I think working more with different color schemes would have been better rather than just changing the hue. So have a monochromatic one, have a complementary, split complementary, stuff like that, and just see what works most with this piece. That's all from me.
Okay, one of the things that immediately caught my attention was outside of the artwork, you mentioned it, which is the refs. Grace, you're doing it right. The images that you collected, how you're thinking about the information that you need in order to succeed, the steps that you need to go through to do it well. Guys, this is a good show of what you need in order to make a good image, a good workflow. Now, workflow can change, of course, from image to image, but she's got a good pose reference. It doesn't have all the information she needs, but it has a lot of the information, and then she has some good photographs of people that will help augment that, to add more believability and personalization to it besides from the basic mannequin. She's got a good lighting direction. Now, she's not going to copy that lighting, but it helps to work out how the values and the colors are going to interact. And the basic rendering style, she's got a reference for that as well in a very similar situation. So these are all good examples of how to step through this process. I'm also with you, Anna. The guy on the left, out of the three of them, I think that we could probably repose him. His overall design, the overall idea of the character, that seems fine. But it's a very passive pose for what should be an exciting situation or dangerous situation. We have the pose of the guy there, but he's literally just standing there. I think somebody said here that he's like enchanting the blade.
Yeah.
That's not really reading. We need something that's more actionable. He's got to be unsheathing a dagger. He's got to be drawing one out. He's got to be dual wielding them. More like this guy over here where he's got two of them together. Give me something more action, and also let's look at not having him basically just standing straight up and down. We need him turning. We need him preparing to strike or striking or something along that line. Made a couple of notes here. Particularly with his legs, like his legs are in a very kind of passive way. The jewel itself, it's an opportunity that we could actually build some more lore into the image. Seeing it now, I'm thinking if it had the form of a cat head, like the Egyptian cat head, or a pharaoh head, or a sphinx head, or, if it had some sort of Egyptianness to it, it would help build in the right mythology to the image. With the barbarian guy, this is one where I can't help but remember the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee. And he notes in that book, like, you never show someone in the middle of the pose. You always show it at the end of the action or the wind-up. It's the wind-up or the follow-through. That's what it is. And so in this, we basically have him in the middle. He's neither preparing to swing or finishing swinging. And we don't necessarily need to have him finishing swinging because he would be like swinging into her. But we could have him doing more of a wind up where his arm is pulled back over him. You've got more of, and he's extending out his torso as he's really pulling back on this thing to get some leverage on this axe. And so the axe is going way up behind him. We want to look at things like, what's his name that did all the Conan covers? Frazetta. Something like that. We could also think about maybe he's one arm is pulling back the axe and the other arm is out there. He's like holding the neck of the mummy and he's about ready to come down with the other arm to smash it. And it gives an interaction between him and the thing he's about to attack. Instead of just, okay, I'm ready, I'll be ready when he comes. Well, he's already there. Let's have him doing something. That would make a little bit more action in the scene. Layout-wise, little change can be helpful here, which is we've got the flame on the wall, like right in front of both of these mummies' faces. So I would suggest we could just move the flames up, the torches on the wall, up towards the corner a little bit more. And that way we're not covering up the guys in the background. And they're going to not be affecting anything up there anyway. So just toss them up there. Yeah, the value scheme I think is working really nicely. With that background hallway going into the dark like that, gives this sort of mysterious feeling to it. And the colors, any of these could work. Make sure that we're not getting too dark though. We can have more ambient light. And just think about whether you want kind of that, like you said, Anna, the like an analogous colors or split complementary, that sort of thing, to help you just understand how we can get some more colors into the scene. Is there anything else? No, overall, I think I'm liking it, and with the way that you've progressed so far and the references you have, I'm confident that you will be able to work out what you need to do the rest of it. Any final thoughts?
Oh, no, I think it's a very good direction. And I'm looking forward for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't give you more time for pause, for your little pause for drinking.
All right, now we have Martin Roca. Martin's been around the group for a
Yay,
long time.
Martin.
He says, "Hey Clint, sorry, but I couldn't decide between these two compositions, so maybe you can help which one is stronger to go for." Both of them feature the band of heroes, completely different layouts though, and feelings to them. And that's okay. There's plenty of times that, I want to say, actually most art directors are probably fine with that if you send them a couple of different concepts. And so that's never really a bad idea. What was your impressions of this one?
Yeah, I just looked at them and I just thought, they're both working well. You did a good job. You did two very good pieces. For personal preference, I'd say I like the top one more because it is a little bit different from what I saw so far in this challenge. So this typical guy in the middle, one on the left, one on the right, is a common thing for this theme to do. This is what people expect to see when we have a composition made of three characters. I think it's a very interesting approach. I'm not sure about the Sphinx in the background, though. It's pretty tiny compared to the guy. I don't know whether anybody would build such a tiny Sphinx. And it's also not angled correctly with the pillar in the back of it. So there's some perspective things going on that you should check with a grid. It's a little bit confusing. But I like the top one pretty much. The idea is cool, and you have a lot of different ways to light this one. So, yeah, I like this one. Which one do you like?
Yeah, he
Grant?
does have the two different lighting situations and the color studies of that image over there. Like a warm and cool version of it. I'm actually the other way. I was thinking that the bottom one probably read better for what the image is. The two other characters weren't reading very immediately in the first image, and there's very little overlapping. Like they're all very staggered visually from each other, and made me think like maybe they're playing against each other. Where in the bottom image, it made me feel like they were working together, that they were a unit. First thing I have to say though is, Martin, it is a square image that we need to make though.
Yeah, that's
That
also
was
what
in
I
the
thought.
outline. Like whatever you do, it needs to be in the square format. All right. So let's make sure that we get that done. Ultimately, go with either one of them. But if you do go with the top one, I am thinking we need to light it or something a little bit different so that the other two characters are showing up. And can we maybe get a little overlapping? Can we get them to group in a little bit? Maybe like, can that guy's arm and end of his sword be like back behind her? Or can he be scooted over a little bit somehow? Yeah. The angle is kind of cool. That you've got like this angled thing going on. I'm guessing that like that's like a pile that's going up because she's not standing upright towards that, because everything's at a different angle. Like the ceiling is going this way and the floor is doing this, but she's standing at that angle, which isn't really right to either one of them. I don't know. It's kind of odd. I almost expect the pillars to be going like this. Okay. With this one down here, I was thinking more about this one with the three characters. I would suggest doing a couple of tweaks to it, though. One is the guy's sword is hanging directly down to the ground. And I don't know why you would do that. It's a very weak pose for what should be like a really powerful character, is to have his sword in front of him touching the ground. So we want to make sure that we actually have that sword up so that he's ready to attack if necessary. The guy in the background, I don't know, that pose seems a little odd, with like one arm straight down and one arm up. I'm thinking it might be better to have him like loading a gun, like he's putting bullets in, a magazine in, or he's cocking it back, or he's pulling a rifle off of his shoulder from behind his back. Yeah, I'm going to just think of something else. And it's like this gun is completely flat to us, and then like that gun is completely flat to us. And so we just would want to look at finding an angle for those so they don't feel so flat. Yeah, on this one, we want to make sure that we have plenty of light in this scene on the top one, so that it's not going to be getting all too lost in the darkness, because a lot of these values and these colors just run together. And this is one where we really do need that layers. We do have a foreground, we have a midground, we have a background, but they're all kind of running into each other. We want to look at how we can use the values and the colors in distinct planes to separate each one of those. And I was just thinking, like with the lighting on this bottom one, instead of just having a gray haze, like maybe that is the entrance back there. And so you do have this bright light of like the light there, and they've just made it in this far, and so now it's starting to get dark and stuff. What was a thought? Okay, any thoughts you would wrap up on that, Anna?
No, there's nothing left, I think, on my list. Let me check. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, as soon as he decided on one of these, he should, because he didn't put any value studies in there, he should go for some value studies and see what different light sources could work well for those pieces. It's always a good thing to do value studies before
Yeah.
committing to something.
Now he did some ideas over on the top left when he with the compositions, but consider doing some more just to work out some variations of what you might like. And I was playing around with it down here on this one. Like they would basically be silhouetted on the outside, then that torch would light them kind of on the left side, on the inside of their bodies, and that way that they would have a clearer like a clearer silhouette from the background because they're all running in a very similar tone. Yeah. Okay. Next we have Mikaela. Mikaela says, so regrettably, I ended up with a shoulder injury that has been preventing me from drawing this week, so I didn't get to finish this first part. Anyways, during that time, I was able to draw. I was mostly focusing on the character design and composition, so I ended up liking the simpler compositions in the end. My main focus I tried to keep was simplicity, dynamism, and the Egyptian theme to be really clear. Well, I think it is. Yeah, it's not that complex. It's not particularly shaded or colored or anything. But I think the time was well spent, and the great use of simple shapes and expressive poses, especially in her, is really helping out. And I just want to pull up here to the concepts, a little small unless I zoom up on them. But then you had the other variation there of the tail with her going up there to the throne and sitting there. And then you had her on the pile of gold, and then this variation. So, what were you thinking about this one, Anna?
Yes, I really liked the cartoony style. I liked the expression in her face. It's very cute. Of course, she's not frightening to to us, but yeah, it's like for children. This game. I
Mm-hmm.
like that. So if I was a child, I'd buy that. It's really cool. Um, what I think is a little bit letting down this composition. There's a lot of unused space again on the left and on the right. There's just bare wall and nothing else. So there could be something more for us to see, some hieroglyphs or paintings or something like that. So maybe she did not get to that yet. She said she couldn't push through because of her injury. So this was just what I thought on that. I'd like to say something about the snakes as well. I think it's kind of odd that the snakes are sticking their heads out of the coins. I think a snake would not getting themselves buried in coins. It's very heavy and hurting them, I think, also a bit probably. So maybe having them like crawl upon them and have a little bit of tail looking through. And I think it would be better than having poop poking their head out, out of the pile of coins.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'd push the poses of the mummies as well, because by now they're just like all standing there and looking different directions, but there is not much variation in them. And I don't know whether I read it right, but the one mummy is like pulling the arm of the other, like, don't go, don't leave me. And the other one is turning away and saying, no, I'm done with you.
I
Something
must
like
go
that.
do my duty for
Um,
my queen.
yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe having a little bit more, yeah, different and more readable poses for the mummies would be good. Yeah.
Don't pull my arm; it will fall off.
Yes. No, don't
Uh,
leave me.
yeah, Mikaela, this is a really nice style and visual approach for particularly a kid's product. And I think it fits really well for this sort of challenge. So I don't want to mess with that at all. Let's talk about some of the other things. Uh, yeah. same idea from me, which is let's put some hieroglyphs and some designs along these walls. And I would probably angle them like this just to help make it kind of more dynamic instead of doing it straight across. This could be more interesting in that they all lead down like this. You can just have angled hieroglyphs coming down. And you could even have some little designs or something maybe coming up the sides of these walls. And with the mummies, yeah, their poses are a little passive. I would rather see that like she's kind of sending out her forces. And so each one of these has a bit more mission to his pose. Maybe, I think I enjoy it here, like, let's get maybe more hump shoulder to some of them. He's more hunchback. You can give him a weapon. You can give him something like a sword just to make him feel like, oh, he's going to go fight somebody. With the tail, I feel like we could get the tail moving a little more up and down instead of just flat on the ground. I mean, this works, and you've drawn it well. But this would give you a little more overlapping, a little more fun with the shapes. And let's push the expression a little bit. Like she's kind of got her mouth open, like, ah. But let's get it where she's shouting. She's giving some order. And if it was me, I would just consider giving her kind of like your snake fangs. And you just give her, slight inhuman quality there, and you could even give snake fangs on her little staff too. Kind of what we talked about on the other one, which is, can we make her slightly more deadly? I want to make sure that she is the bad guy. So maybe giving just some simple spikes on her, what is that, coif? The thing that goes around your neck. And then...
Color? I don't know. You're the English one here.
Yeah. Somebody can correct me. I'm with you on the snakes as well. It's a little odd that you got two of them just sticking out towards the middle, like hissing at each other. With the way that you can draw the snakes, particularly the tail of the lady in that first image tells me like you can really do some good stuff with them. And what if we took out these two guys? That's not the layer I'm meant to be on. What if we took these guys out, but there was like a series of snakes that were kind of proceeding from her, and they were, slithering up towards the viewer, or the kind of her army is slithering out from around her, and they're nice, big, threatening snakes, big fatties, and not necessarily little skinny ones. So that can be cool, and they can kind of be raising their heads, and maybe they're hissing. Like snake coming up here, and you got one in the middle, he's eyeing you. So that could be pretty cool too. Yeah, I would keep most of it the way it is. Composition all works. It's straightforward. That works. The sort of shape language you're using is excellent. So yeah, I'm sorry you hurt your shoulder, but I think this is in a good place, and I hope that you can finish it up. I'd love to see how it comes out. Yeah, Esri, I got your image down here. It says Shoujo Esri. I assume that was yours. Because you had said something about there if I got your piece. Yeah. I feel like this challenge is becoming the Tomb of the Naga. Yeah, a lot of people like drawing the Naga. Pinto background. Karn is up next. Zoom up a little bit. That text is small. Hi, Clint. Please skip my last name. No problem. I have no clue how to pronounce that. This is my first challenge. Well, Karn, welcome. Glad you decided to join in. Hopefully we'll make it worth your while. For this piece at the main concept stage, I've decided to change the composition of the character since from the sketch it's kind of imbalanced in terms of character importance. And I need your feedback to improve my work to the professional level. Because I've been stuck in this skill ceiling for a while, and no one around me can tell me how to improve my skills. And you're the best one I've seen so far. Well, thank you, and I will certainly do what I can. We talked about this, Anna and I, a little bit before stream. And can you give us a rundown of what your impression was and maybe of some of the studies and such?
Yeah, so we both agreed that this is a really good piece, that we like it, and the poses are very interesting and varied. My first thought was that the characters are a little bit meshed together, so we are losing the silhouettes of each character. So if you zoom out a little bit more, you will get a little bit lost within the painting. So what are they doing? But
Mm-hmm.
this might also be a problem because of the values at the moment. They are all having the same values, and maybe you can work this also out that each of them is standing out a little bit more in their own way. And for the second thing, that what I thought might be personal preference, but I feel like this is going to be a centered composition and everything is a little bit to the right. So the characters are a little bit more on the right and the title is directly in the middle. Um, I try moving it around or a little bit more to the left and see whether this works as well. It's still looking as good. Um, but I don't know, maybe Clint can say something about whether it works like that or not. Think about a little bit about the lighting, as we said to the others, have a top lit or a front lit. Think about two different main sources, variations, and also warm and cool light oppositing each other. And for the color studies, I'd like the first one most. I think the triad could work as well, of course, but I like the colors in the color study. They were harmonious, working very well together, and they have a nice strength and punch. It's just warm and cool.
Mm-hmm.
I just like this. But the others are also not bad. I really liked them all. Um, totally up to Cardin Krai, or what is I think it's Thai. It's Thai, so I think they roll their R's. So Krai, something like that.
It's probably better
Um,
than I could do.
I'm not sure. Maybe a Kap Kun Ka. Sawadee. That's all my Thai I have. That's already all. Yeah. So these are my thoughts on this one.
Okay. Well, yeah, it is a little right balanced for something that we would want to be completely balanced. Small change, but yeah, I think if you actually just shifted everything slightly to the left, it would actually visually be a little more pleasing. Had a couple of thoughts here, and I did a few little changes on a, not really a paint over, but I noted a couple of things. I do like your value studies. I mean, your compositions here. And the composition is very simple, using just big blocks of tone to compose your scene. And you're basically dividing those into just a couple of values. I like that. That's nice. The value studies themselves, almost completely the same. This is where we're probably missing a lot of opportunity on playing around with different lighting situations. And again, if we just think about, I mean, even if you don't have any great ideas, you just think about, okay, one has light tones, one has medium, and one has dark. Which plane are we going to make which? And that alone, you can run through a couple of variations of that, and likely one of those is going to hit you. But it looks like you're going with what you got here, and I think that's fine. We just got to play with the colors and the lighting correctly here to get the most out of it. And I would think, like, I just had a couple of lines here with the skeletons. The skeletons could be bigger and a little closer to us. They're about the same size as the characters, and but they're supposed to be closer to us, so they should be considerably bigger, just, perspective-wise. And so that would be one thought on that, the simple thing there. With this, I think the color scheme that you have started is actually okay. This is one where I wouldn't take it I wouldn't take it too realistically. I wouldn't be too hard about, how accurate it is. I think the basic sort of warm gold color scheme that you have is working. And then each one of these kind of have its own light source, its own unique color that affects it. And let me turn on some layers that sort of shows what that direction might look like. One is like looking at this. This is just a linear dodge layer. Uses some dark pure tones to make an adjustment here. And it's saying, okay, well, the girl looks like she's a mage of some kind. Kind of reminds me of the Scarlet Witch. And we've got like this pinkish glow, but okay, we want to embrace that. We want to really make her about that. So we give her the glowing eyes because she's the magic user. And we give her the glowing hands because, she's about to deal some damage. And we can even give her an aura of that same sort of purple tone. Sorry, I messed my back up earlier and I keep moving around, but I can't make it stop being a pain. So, the tone there, and then we can have a little bit of that spilling over to the other character next to her. The background guy has obviously some magic of his own, so he's more blue tinted. And we want to make sure that we're using some of these lights like this in order to separate the shapes of the character. Because like Anna said, on a distance view, they're really getting muddled together. They don't have clear silhouettes. So we have to clarify those silhouettes with the color. Next up, I would consider adding in... He doesn't have his own illuminated object, like he doesn't have magic, but we could have the idea that there is some off-scene light source over there that is giving a bit of light here, so that part of his body is being brought out, and that his silhouette is reading a little better that way. And we need to think about how we can also make the skeletons show up. Maybe there's a light source behind them that's illuminating the back of their heads, or maybe they're being front lit or top lit or something so that they are more visible that way. Then a little... the sword could be lit. Thomas, he could have a magic sword. That's an option. Or he could be having a torch in one hand and a sword in the other. Something like that as well. Little change here. Really letting the gold pop. So what I'm thinking lighting-wise is basically keep what you have, which is most of the bright light is back there in the background. All of the light that's basically hitting them is just the ambient light of the scene bouncing around and bringing them to where they are value and color-wise. And then all you're doing after that is adding in the specific lights from them, like the hand light, the blue hand light magic, and the hot pink purple magic from her, and then the side light kind of hitting him, and he has a combination of the three that helps his show up. And style-wise, I don't think you want to go realistic. I was looking around and I saw this one. I think this is maybe the direction that would look good for yours, which is, it's not completely realistic lighting-wise or render-wise. It's just nice and clean, and it has good shapes going on, and that might be a good direction to sort of go with this image. Now, I've tossed out quite a bit there. I'm actually interested to hear kind of what some of your thoughts are, Anna, about how you think this sort of approach could work.
Yep. I think this is really good. So, I'm still thinking, but I just can't come up with anything else. So, I think it's good. Like that. Looking forward to it.
Some edge, some rim lights coming down or something. Something like that. I mean, if it was me, I'd probably push it even further and have like, more glow, so that each one of these has almost like a little atmosphere. You're pushing the atmosphere around them, so that their shapes hold up a little better.
Yeah, and this way they also stand out much more from each other. So, It's
Mm-hmm.
more readable what belongs to what character, and they're not like one clump. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, on a lot of images like this, there's not one way to do it. There's not a right way and a wrong way. There's just a lot of different ways. And it depends kind of how you want to treat it. And I think something like this could work. The pillar in the background over here is pretty cool. That it's broken. I did think about maybe adding some of the vines because he had this one like viney thing coming down. I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe put that there. And then you also had like these rocks over here that were floating, and that could even be cool. I'd maybe even go into that a bit more. Like there's some sort of magic going on in here that like there's these floating rocks. You can do the Pandora style, right? And they've got like stuff connected to them growing off the bottom of them. And so you got this weird. Oh, you know what you can do is add like rope bridges and stuff connecting these. And so you almost have a feeling of what the level would look like because there's these connected walkways and kind of this Ewok structure of connecting bits of this magical pyramid. Yeah, it can be fun stuff. All right, next we have Shoujo Garis.
Ezra.
Ezri. Okay, now I have that turned off. Good. Says, it took me really long to understand a bit better how to create a composition with multiple characters interacting and make them feel united. Facial gestures are still missing, but I still got references for each. I did struggle with colors. I did realize each character has a unique palette, and only light will make them look even. Yet I'm not sure I achieved it. This render is the best I can do with the time, yet totally out of my workflow. So I'm afraid to really achieve the look I want, I will only use this as a reference. Okay, well, yeah, it does feel like you are kind of out of your workflow. That you're not used to not trying to compose a scene that has multiple figures and scenes and backgrounds and all this stuff going on in the same time in the same scene. And that can be complicated, definitely. And so I do admire that you're willing to step out and give that a shot. Up here, we do have a couple of concepts that you went through. One is actually pretty close to the other one, which is somebody in the near ground, foreground trying to reach to a treasure. And then we have the three of them there. And then we have the one closer to what we have now that you basically cleared up with the three characters in a row, each one of them having different action. But I feel like a thing that you need to focus on is more of the oh, okay, sorry. I hit a button there. I was like, did I mess up the sound? We have to get a better idea of what the workflow is for a proper scene like this. Because we got things like the colors are kind of just real quick and haphazard, and we've got a lot of fuzziness going on, and you've got things like part of the background mummy is out of focus. Like and we don't need any of that. So at this stage, we don't necessarily even need color. And we certainly don't need to be doing anything with Gaussian blur to create depth of field for background characters if we haven't even sketched in, faces. So I think you're really jumping ahead of yourself, and it's ultimately using up a lot of time because we don't need to address these things at this time until we get other things determined yet. So on this, one of the things is we've got a lot of bright ghost bunnies, and that's really odd, and it's not really helping the scene. So that's just one of those ideas that under the right circumstance, yeah, that's cool. But it doesn't really do anything. Like it makes me feel like this scene is actually somehow connected to ghost bunnies, because there's one bright that is like the brightest, most colorful thing in the scene are these ghost bunnies, and the scene is not about the ghost bunnies. So I'm gonna say let's take them out, and we need to double down on the Egyptian theme to this. If I did not know this was supposed to be Egyptian, I wouldn't know. There's nothing really about this that gives it that vibe, other than the one monster in the scene is a mummy. So when you're laying out a scene like this, one of the first things that you want to do is establish what the volume is in the scene. That's why a lot of people start with some sort of perspective grid. And then once you figure out the volume, this is, kind of the whole idea of draw in a box, right? That's a it's a really standard approach, draw in a box. So you draw a box, and then it gives you an idea of what the volume is, and then I can start coming in here and I can start placing elements in this box, and I have an idea of how they are volumetrically going to fit with each other and how they fill that space up without messing up the perspective and everything. And here we have reference photos that you took of yourself. Awesome. I like it. But the reference photos don't use the same perspective. And they don't exist within the same box volume. So we just have a bunch of independently perspectivized characters. So what we need is, okay, we want this scene. Now what I'm going to do is create a drawing. And you can use the same general arrangement. And talk to Anna. Anna has some ideas about some changes with the composition. We'll chat with her in a second. But say that we have kind of like an overlay here and go, okay, well, that is the basic layout. Like you said, that's going to work as your reference. And now I need to establish what my volume is. That's going to be the background wall, and it's kind of like this. And my perspective is going to be like this. And then, okay, this guy is going to be, he'd be touching the ground here. This one would be touching the ground here. And you've got to work out where these guys are in this volume in relation to each other, so that they're the right size and the right perspective so they match up. And then we also have to think about the background. How can we make this more like pyramids? Go back to the style guide, look at some of the references of what that looks like. Now, over to you, Anna. You were thinking about some of the poses, maybe how to make some tweaks with that and the composition. Can you walk us through some of those thoughts?
I took today a little bit longer for Esri because I felt the last time in the challenge we said general things to help him, and as it seems he could not take it in all what we said the last time, so I wanted to make it a little bit more clear with this try. I wanted to help him to find a better way of approach and how to do a painting like this with so many different characters in it. And besides thinking about complicated poses or getting reference for these, maybe it would help him the approach that you just said with the boxes and having first for each character a box and putting them on different compositions to each other. Mm-hmm. Is it a triangled one, or is one in the back, is one in the front? Maybe he could even use objects in his room to place them and think about, okay, where I want whom to stand, and then get the first little sketches down and develop from there further. I tried to stay as close to his idea as I could and did a little sketch on myself, but it was like a 5 to 10 minute very fast scribble. It's not good by any means, but I just wanted to make my point clear here on how to arrange them a little bit more differently. So I had the guy still in the right corner, a little bit more close to us. And then I thought, okay, this is my main character, number one. I want to have the people look first on him because he is the biggest character. And then I need something to lead to the next. And so I use the body of the next character that is holding the shield so that it flows to him, and then from him a little bit with helping of hair or magic or the pose of the magician, and put her more in the background so she's tinier, which also gives us more depth. And then her hair and magic or whatever is leading a little bit more to the title. So first think about what path is the viewer taking through your painting. So I didn't change much, just the sorceress, because she had a very weird body angle, to me at least. So try to go a little bit more for natural poses by now. I know you love exploring poses that are super crazy and spinning and jumping and twisting and all that, but maybe you should not focus on such a thing now. You don't have to have a crazy pose in order to make a good painting.
Yeah.
And I think stick with the more simpler ones by now that are readable and work with those. So I just made her jump back and maybe having done some magic pushed forward, like she's defending herself or so.
Yeah.
As a next step, when you have that, when you say, okay, I have now my characters placed in a good way that they're readable and I have good poses, then you throw in just black and white and gray. So you just your values. And I did that too with just one approach. So I thought, what could be a main light source?
I actually
and
forgot
I
to
had
download that one.
yeah, no problem. I can send him over to him later.
Okay.
So I made a where the stone is glowing and they're a little bit backlit, the rest of them, with having some edge lights, some rim lights going on and so on to make them stand out. And when you have that, Esri, that's already for us, for now, good. The next time you take part in the challenge, I would love to see just so far that you have this done. I don't want to see any color and crazy effects and stuff like that. Stick with really, really basic things because you won't learn from this. You did the same mistakes as you did with the last challenge because you tried the same thing again. You did the same approach again. You had armbands for the magician and the bands wrapping around the mummy in the background. You went in the details without having the bones and the structure of your painting first down.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, going forward, Esri, don't worry about even getting to the color stage at this point. No filters, no color, no... I don't even really want to see a fuzzy brush or like the airbrush. Just lines is fine. We need to really focus on the composition, good composition, and legible. I have to be able to understand what I'm looking at, and things like the rabbits, the magic rabbits. The fact is, like, they're covering up so much of the characters, and we have, thinking from the art director's side that, we have to sell these characters. This image is about these characters, and then there's the sort of narrative aesthetic element of poses, where it's like, we've got a lady that's turned away from her enemy looking at the ceiling while in the middle of a fight, conjuring stuff over her head. It doesn't make sense. I do like the variety of, okay, you got like the greedy dude in the foreground going for the treasure. Keep it. I like it. You got your classic, hero in the background with the big shield. And he's coming in to fight. Good, I like it. You got the mage lady. Cool, I like it. But kind of approaching it more like Anna said, which is you're thinking in terms of close, medium, and far. And that would be a better use of shapes and arrangement than keeping them all kind of on the same plane, just right next to each other. Okay, well, hopefully you don't take that too hard. But it's easy to try to throw too much in too early, and just usually when you do that, it ends up suffering long term. In fact, if you don't even get any color done for the final, I'm fine. I would rather see that you'd spent your time like really honing the design of the characters, honing the design of the environment, working out the composition, working out the expressions, considering the lighting and the values. Forget the color. I don't care. Learning wise, it would be better use of your time to handle that. Okay, gotta move on. So we'll leave it there on that one. Next up is Travis Earls. Oh, that's not the one I meant to click. Travis. Oh, it is. Okay, I thought it misclicked and opened the wrong one. Okay, here we are with Travis's image. And he says, I was going for a Naga as the main boss. I mean, that is the only main boss, right? I mean, was there other options? Apparently not. And some lackeys. Okay, cool. I kept the half-human, half-animal theme going across all of them for continuity. See, that's a cool idea. That wasn't put in the brief. They didn't have to be, amalgams. But it's kind of a nice idea, and I appreciate the thought behind that. I'm unsure about my contrast. I spent a lot of time adjusting that back and forth, trying to figure out what was too much or not enough. So he has a couple of excellent little compositions with simple values on them up there on the top left. Same sort of arrangement of characters playing up their poses, playing up the positions of them. Then we have some lighting studies, kind of figuring out how bright the light is, how much on the foreground, how much on the background, that sort of thing. And working with some simple color schemes of like the blue and orange, the cool tones, and then the all gold tones. Now, I think this actually has a lot of potential. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. But some things are a little messy. Could use some work. What were you looking at as far as a couple of improvements or things to consider, Anna?
Yeah, so for me, what stood out first was the angle of the character looks very stiff. Why? Is that because her hips, her shoulders, and her head are basically following parallel lines and they're not offset to each other. What was it? Who was it?
Travis?
Travis. What he did better in his sketch. So in the sketch phase, he has them angled in different angles. If you look at the sketch again, so I bring that back. Have her head tilt the other way, for example, or be a little bit more straight as it was in the sketch, being a little bit more in front of the body and not on top, so that we get a little bit more depth in there. So I like the sketch very much. It's very dynamic, and while rendering, you lost a lot of that dynamic suddenly. Also, it's not an Anubis, but I don't know what it is. The bulky guy, also lost a lot of its dynamic. He's not running anymore. He's standing there and holding his arms stiffly in front of him, his chest. He lost so much. He's also very close again to her. He's a little bit huge. I'd put him, as it is in the sketch, much more further away, adding more to the depth. It's losing the silhouette of her And the same with the flying girl guy, I don't know what it is. Having them a little bit more in the back would add much more to the painting. And yeah, so I'd go a little bit more into the sketch direction with this piece.
You're right. There's a lot more dynamic posing going on in the sketches, and we're losing a lot of that. So, yeah, I think you just got to go back to a lot of that, but particularly on that guy. He's very static right now, and I would like to see more of that initial pose from him. Even him just leaning over a little bit more. But I like the points that you brought up about the main Naga, and that her hips and her shoulders are at basically the same angle, which is very dull. And you also have her she's tilted over, but she's all completely straight to you, which is a little odd. Like she's a snake. And we also would expect her to have some twist to her body, like upper body, lower body twisting from itself. Even normally, if you're walking, you have more twist to your body. So here, if it was me, you toss it in my hands. What am I going to do with it? Okay, the twist up, this big S curve's good, but I'm going to change it so that she's switched her focus, that she's looking over here now, and she's turned her shoulders to be this way, and her hips are still kind of going this way. So you've got this sort of thing where her upper body is kind of facing that direction, but her lower body is still sort of facing the other way, and you get this mid twist to her. So you get the body kind of mainly going one way, but the head going the other way, where something's caught her attention. And that would be more interesting. With this guy, even if you wanted to make this guy a little more passive, I mean, I'm okay with that. He doesn't have to be super aggressive. Might look at changing his silhouette up so it's just a little more spiky. It's a little more visible that way. But with the bird, I think it's a lady. The bird lady, I think the idea of having a flying creature like that is pretty cool. But right now we have a very left-heavy scene. He's looking left, she's looking left, and this character is banking over to the left. Everything is going up to the left. And we need to offset that. You can do that a couple of different ways. One of the easiest ways is what I mentioned, which is you actually just have this main character turning to look back the other direction. I'm actually wondering if we could do a really fast face flip. Even if you just do that, all of a sudden it doesn't have quite the same amount of left pull to it, because you've got one of the characters looking off the other direction. You could also flip so the bird is banking the other direction. So all of these guys are leaning this way, but her flying is going to be taking her that way. So she's banking the other way. Okay. We've got this sort of odd big tangent in the background, which is the Sphinx pharaoh face, whatever you want to call it. And we've got the eyes directly behind her arms. And all we need to do, and this would be great, actually, I think this would be a very nice thing, is a lot closer to what you have up there, which is we want the eyes visible. Just move it up. Just move it up so that we've got the eye directly over her arm there, and the eye visible on the other side of her head. And then the top of the headpiece can just bump up out of the top of the image over top of the logo here. And that's fine. You just get that whole back thing scooted up a little bit, and then you have those great peering eyes on either side of the Naga's head, and the composition works way better that way. Also, if we're twisting her body so that upper body, lower body are kind of going at different angles, then we've got a better sense of the volume and the form going on between them. And, oh, forgot to turn off my phone. spam call there. Okay, we're also losing. Well, I don't want to say losing. I think you're getting a little confused with all of the details and other stuff going on with the scene. Leave off the glowy bits for now. They each have some glowy tattoos and stuff. Okay, I get that. I like it. But we need it to work without that. We need to block it in without that. So when we get into the lightings and the colors and stuff like this, instead of blocking it in the way that you have here, think of it more in terms of each character's either tone or overall gradient. So she is overall going to be what? Lighter or darker than the background? I think darker could actually work pretty well. I'm just saying, well, yours, I guess, is probably closer to this one. So, and it doesn't mean black. Really doesn't mean black. It just means darker, and then the background is going to be lighter. So, we want to divide this, again, into overall value tones. Overall, the background is this sort of value. She is overall this value. And then they are going to be somewhere in the middle. And they're going to be halfway between that brightness of the background and the darkness of her. And then we have very clear ones. And then in each inside of each one of these value ranges, so you establish what the general value range is for the entire character. And then you go in here and you have three variations. You have a light value. So you're modifying it. So inside of this range, let me do it over here. It's like saying the background is going to be this value. The midground is going to be this value. And then the dark value is going to be like this. But inside of each one of these is a different range. So inside of here you have white, the medium, and then a dark. But they're much smaller. It's like each one of these is like a third of a value. And then you have a light, a medium, and a dark version within that one. And then within this one, there's a light, a medium, and a dark within that. And so each one of these has three values within itself, but none of them are high enough or low enough to jump over to the value of the other one. And it allows you to develop form, but keep an overall value scheme where each plane and each character is separate from each other. This is actually, this sort of breakdown, this sort of approach, I'm considering just doing a standalone educational video where we go through this sort of process, where we focus mainly on doing value studies and color studies using this same sort of approach. And so if you're interested in that, let me know, and I might prioritize that a little higher. But anyway, it keeps coming up, and there seems to be a lot of kind of confusion of how to approach that. And if you do it the right way, it's really not that difficult. So that would be something. Let me know about if that's in your interest. And so that's what you want to do for each one of these. And it could be even like this. Instead of just doing one block, it could be overall she goes from light to dark. So she has a gradient. But then you have to adapt the gradient in its three ranges as you go up or down the gradient. Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up. I do like the underlight. Make sure we're getting nice color though. It's like that background statue. We can still have plenty of color back in it. We can have your darker oranges. We can have some of your green tones. We can have some of your more reddish tones. And we can have all these guys back here. And make sure that we're not using black to shade with. Go look at some Pinterest tutorials on shading with color and not with black. I feel like you might have a tendency to do that. Maybe it's just because you use the black as like a multiply layer or something. But anyway, some thoughts. Okay, wrap it up there. We might even get close to finishing on time. That would be a nice change.
Okay. 20 minutes to go.
This one is by Veronica. I particularly like some of these references up here. I don't know who did some of these, but those are lovely. I would like to know how best to tie together the multiple light sources. I'm worried the magic takes too much away from the picture and goes too far away from the lighting direction chosen above. Second, I'm not sure how to show that the room is a pyramid in the shape of this perspective angle. Any suggestions would be great. Thanks. Okay, let me get you going on this one. What is your thoughts, Anna, on this piece? I think there are some lovely things going on here, but a lot of it's perhaps underutilized. How would you take it?
So I really like the painting style of Veronica, and she has also very great references taken of herself. I like that very much. Her different approaches and composition are also a very good way to go. For the painting she chose, the very first thing that came to my mind beside value was that the character in the middle is standing there a little bit passively. She's like looking over, but there are guys or mummies supposed to be in front of her, so she doesn't seem to care about them very much. She's like, well, I don't know. She's looking far away, and the other girls are like, oh my gosh, they're coming. And she's like, who cares? So that was a kind of odd to me at first. I think she did not take any of the value studies from above because it's all pretty dark and the value studies are much lighter. I'd get back some of the midtones and a little bit more bright tones as well, because it's really, really dark and I really must get close to my screen to see everything. It might be my screen, but it needs a little bit of an approach to approaching to see everything in detail. So I like to change the values mostly, and the mummies in the front are by now just implemented there, but having like them already climbing up there or something would probably be a little bit cooler, like they're already very close, so one is already nearly on the top and maybe the one on the right is looking at it directly and trying to defend, or having a little bit more interaction between the mummies in the foreground and the characters would be cool, I think. I don't think that the magic would take away so much with a working value system. It was my dog, sorry. With a working value system. I think it's a good thing to lead the eye, to use them with the magic and the brightness of the magic. Just as the rest is too dark by now. These were my first thoughts. And how to make it look like the inside of a pyramid, I have no idea. I would have to look up references, what a pyramid could look from inside. I don't even know whether they have such high rooms inside the pyramid.
I don't think they do.
Or I think it's really, really just like very small, what is it called? Corridors? Something like that, and labyrinth, and that's all. I think there are nothing like that. So, but yeah, it could get a pyramid shape, like the pillars are really, really coming together, like a very strong 3-point perspective could work to have this pyramid feel. But I think it wouldn't be appropriate to what a pyramid would look from the inside.
Yeah. Okay. Didn't mean to say new layer. The mummies, or whatever they are that's down here, are so dark they're basically not even visible. So that would be something to consider. But going off the question is, you're worried that the magic takes too much away from the picture, it goes too far away from the lighting direction chosen. I'm kind of going the other way, Veronica. I'm a big proponent of, if you are introducing a light source in this scene, such as magic or flames, then utilize it. Make that your light source instead of necessarily everything else. This one I would take in a similar direction as the other one, which is really playing up that each one of these kind of has its own color scheme. And this would allow us to bring in a lot more color and a lot more light, which would take it in the direction of the colorful family board game. Right now it is getting a lot more to your, what's it called, Arkham Horror board game, which is like the mysterious, dark powers, horror board game. And that's not what this one is. So we want to make sure that we are taking it to have more color, to have more light. And you have these ready-made, beautifully colored light sources in the scene. So you might get what you'd had as your direction and say, well, that was a starting point, but maybe we should go actually past that. Now, I did a little color change here. I'll pull up examples of that. I do like your mention about the pose. Her pose is very passive, and I think you could get away with it if we don't treat these as mummies who are attacking. I'm almost thinking like if you did the like the skull on a spike thing, and you got some of that sort of thing going on, which, okay, deadly tomb with skulls on the spikes, and that way there's no immediate threat, and so you're like, okay, it's okay that she's not, getting an action pose. And so instead of showing necessarily a mummy attacking her, you can do it that sort of way. And then that could be kind of cool. Aside from that, we do want to make better use of the beautiful fabrics you have in the design of these characters. That's one of the things that you'll see a lot in good game art is flowy stuff. Flowy stuff has action, it has movement, and it also would give us the chance to have a bit more overlapping. We do have this sort of like force field around the characters that keeps them from overlapping each other. And we don't necessarily need that. So like this character obviously has magic and he's channeling something. So these scarf things that he has coming down, they can just be floating. It can just be doing this sort of thing, and he can have some floating around there behind him. And the end of the, I don't know, the dress, shawl, I don't know what he has. But that could be doing this sort of thing too, right? Whatever he's got could be doing this sort of thing. It gives a nice silhouette there. And I think, does she have a cape, or is that, I almost thought that she had a cape coming down. Actually, that wouldn't be a bad idea, a cape. Or we almost need to give her something. This person's got some lovely fabrics here, and we could have those blowing out behind her. We could have some fabrics blowing off this way, and it would just make it more dynamic and get more motion coming from the characters. Now let's take a look at some lighting, hard light layer, to do some quick adjustments. And here I'm just separating each one of them out with their light source and adding some light source in the background so that it is going contrary to the angle of the lights on the characters. So the characters basically are going to be more lit at the top, allowing them to be more silhouetted at the bottom. So light here, dark there. Okay, so what's the background do? The opposite. So the background needs to be dark up here and light down there. And that way, the values will play off of each other. And that was the idea between this. So the background now here is lit and it's dark up here, allowing the dark to shine against the light there. And this dark goes against that light. And so you have the contrast between those. And it also follows some of the, lighting kind of designs you have on those. And then I would follow that up with adding some designs on the columns. And I really love this. I think this is a very nice shape over here on these columns, with the big fluted top coming up with the pillar on the top of it. I think that would be close enough to give that pyramid feeling. You don't necessarily have to have a realistic pyramid, but if we add some of those fan shapes on the top as it comes out, and add some of these, and allowing them not to be in a straight line, but playing up that angled shape to them, just gives you more focus down on that character. It's a lot more of the composition. So, oops, that's not what I meant to do on that layer. So here we have kind of the dual composition of, you got the pyramid shape coming up to bring you to that main character, and then you also have this one coming down to that character here, and then you can put some of the skulls on spikes down here. Right? And that would be pretty cool. And that would give a nice direction, and you might think about putting like some gold in the columns back here to give some pop, some glints of light, reflections of light and color back there. Yeah. So, I mean, this takes it in a bit of a different direction. How would that sort of change hit you, Anna?
I'm always so amazed by your overpaints, Clint. Just such a few changes, and you can already see how it will look in the end. Very cool. I love it. Can't wait for this one.
Yeah, and this isn't like fancy changes. This isn't like high level little nuance changes. This is just a series of guidelines that you can implement, and it's going to give you very good strength to your overall composition. It's using good, strong compositional shapes and using basic shapes in your not basic values for your characters, basic gradients of light to dark against each other, and you're always looking to pull out those simple options first if those can address the issues. If not, then we can look for more complex, more advanced ways of trying to have a solution. But this could all work. I think this is cool. Anything else I was going to mention? No, light to dark, pyramid. Yeah, I think that would work for the pyramid. It doesn't have to be complete. And then you would just have a little bit of the spill light. So some of the green light would be over here on her, but it wouldn't be as strong as on him. So it's enough so that it feels like the two of them are kind of playing with each other, right? That they exist in the same universe next to each other. But green is his color. Violet is her color. And then all the golden yellow tones are her color. And then it's like half as strong on the other characters. So. Okay, stop there. And the last one up is William. Is William in the chat? Yeah, he's been chatting. Okay.
Yes, so, he's already saying, please be nice, just give him love and tell him he's perfect. That's what he said.
Well, in case you guys are new, then know that if you are having your image here being reviewed, you are welcome to toss comments or extra questions to me during the time that I'm reviewing your image. So, just to make use of the live nature of the program. We do have a small book that he's written over here in the bottom, so we'll read that. Commenter, concern, question, optional. Hello, Clint and Anna. Feel free to read this in a Sean Bean or Jon Snow accent as I live in that area. Oh, okay. Well, what area is that?
Something British, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Kit Harington's from or Sean Bean. But let's see. Snow has like a really breathy
Sheffield, he says. North England, Sheffield.
Okay. Well, seeing as how I've never been there, this will be really good. I always remember him having like this consternated way of speaking where you think he's maybe about to cry. He's just so convicted about what he's saying. Overall, having fun and happy. Well, I'm glad somebody's having fun and happy. However, I'm not sure which value study to go for. I'm thinking 3, but I asked group. And I think most people like 2. I've run out of time. So the color was just a quick 30-minute color overlay. A value study 3 to get some ideas down. I am going to go away and really nail the color, but please, I would appreciate direction on what you think and what value study you think works best. I've tried to keep it fun and show the adventure side and give the characters different personalities. All right, well, that's what you got offhand.
Yeah. Was very suffering. Suffering Jon Snow.
Yeah, he always feels like he's just having the worst day, and it's like, oh man, oh, well, we've got to do this, you know, and, like, dude, lighten up a little bit. Your throat's going to give out here at any time.
Can you say she is my queen?
Does he say that?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, I guess she is my queen. I would need to go listen to him and Sean Bean.
Yeah.
One does not simply walk into Mordor. That's about the only thing I think is. Yeah. Because he's always about to die, and that's why he's having the worst day. Yeah, that guy did not have a cushy life. So, we went with composition number 2. I think Anna was actually a fan of composition number 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Must you say that now?
I say that now. Throw you under the bus a little bit. Tell us why composition number 1 is better.
I don't say it's better. It's personal liking. It's very, very subjective. Will is a pro. He's already working as an artist. You can even commission him. Everything he always throws at me or at us is good. All he does is good. I cannot say it's all nitpicky things. The reason why I like composition 1 most is just because it's very different from what I have seen else in this challenge. He went for the typical guy in the front, one on the left, one on the right that we had earlier, which is a stable composition and what people would expect of 3 characters fighting in a dungeon somewhere. So I'm also totally fine with composition 2. It's just I like this more mysterious and this little bit more creepy direction that composition 1 had. But I'm fine with 2. We can go with 2. Let's do it.
Either one of these works. Either one, I think, showcases kind of what the game is about, and it does it fine. One is more about the treasure hunting, showcases like the collecting of treasure aspect, and the other one showcases more of the battle idea of the game, and both are good. I'm going to say just go. You've already put in so much time. Go with what you've got. It's excellent. But we do need to make some changes. And before we talk about values and before we talk about color, we've got to talk about some of the characters and primarily the poses. I'm going to just be a little straight with you, William. I don't think I'm going to scare you off. But this guy's pose is... the middle guy's pose needs to change. Because basically we've got the guy completely in the middle of the scene with his legs spread open right in the middle of the image. It's a very odd pose, and certainly to put it right in the middle of the scene. And then you have like guys' hands reaching right up. And you've got
spear.
A spear pointing right to it. So you've got like all of these visual pointers coming right down to the middle. And it's just a very odd decision. And so we've got to change that. This is some sort of thing like a company would say, yeah, we can't print that on their board cover. That's not going to sell right. And it's beyond that. I've done that same sort of thing too, where you have an angle and you sketch it out, and because you're paying attention to other factors. And it's not until you sketch it out and you kind of back up and you go, oh, well, I didn't even think about that. So yeah, we've got to do it. And he's got like this back lean to him, which is kind of odd. Like even beyond what we're talking about in his kind of pose, like it feels like he's leaning backwards, which I'm not sure why. So, I mean, the overall character design, kind of like this, Arabian thing tied around his waist and the baggy pants and the headdress piece. I'm not sure what you call that. I think that all works. That's good. Your rendering, of course, is excellent. But we've got to find what we ought to do instead. He says, what do I do instead? I base the whole thing around this pyramid figure. Well, I would consider maybe just having him walking. Just having him walking forwards. And it's like he's so... like he knows he's so good, he's not even concerned. And so you've got the hips here, and you've got one leg going in front of the other one. And then you could just have him dual wielding. So he's got a sword here, and he's got a sword here. And so you still get this shape, but basically his body's making more of a triangle shape here, and the arms and the double blades are coming out this way. Or you can do that and give him some sort of cape, because he seems like he's fancy sort of dude. And so maybe there's a cape that kind of comes out behind him that gives him a nice swishy kind of triangular pattern that would keep that shape going with it. And if you do this, just to keep with the theme a little bit better, go more with your curved scimitar. You want more of your sort of thing going on. And that would be a little more consistent with kind of the design of the character, and just give some more attitude to the blade. I do, of course, want to give a shout out. The expressions on these characters are fantastic. This lady back here and this kind of like, ugh. Like, she's more creeped out than she is necessarily even scared. And that's fantastic. So I love that. These guys' expressions over here, and guys, take a look at this. This is something that William's doing really well. And this, I did mention it a little earlier, which is using the hands to convey emotion. And like looking at the attention that he's putting in to these hands. That's really, really nice. And this guy too, like this, each one of these good shapes going on there, good volumes, good characteristics with that. And he really pushes the expression, which is really nice. They're not subtle. We don't need necessarily subtle expressions for an image like this. So if this guy's yelling, he's really yelling. I mean, the mouth is really open. Eyebrows are way down. Eyes are pushed up from underneath. And this guy's yelling. It's not, it's, it's real big and open. So these are really good. Yeah, the personality of the characters, that's the right word. Like, the personality just comes out very well. I would adjust this guy's arm. It seems like it is getting too little too fast. And same thing with this guy's hand. That this guy's head would be like this big. And I get the hand might be about right, but I think this arm is going to be more like this before it gets there. And this spear, for as heightened of a foreshortening as we're getting in this scene, that this end of the spear is probably going to get perceptibly bigger before it gets there, and this hand is likely going to be significantly bigger than even that hand, with how much force perspective we've got. I like the scene. I like the pillars, that it's like this soft second level to the scene before you get back to some background statues and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so that was some of my feedback. Going off of that, what are your thoughts, Anna?
Yeah, we already talked through everything. So I think you gave really nice ideas for changes for the middle guy. It was a little bit like, look at my crotch, and that's a little bit problematic, especially if you want to sell it to children, this game. So I think he has now good ideas to work from there. For the values, you want to elaborate on that, or did you?
Oh yeah, we didn't really talk about those when you pull back up here. Again, each one of these, maybe not the best value studies, because I think you're getting down to too much detail. You're getting like the value changes under the eyebrows and under the nose, and we don't need to be worried about that level of variation, that small of a value change. Instead, we want to be thinking more about foreground guys are this particular value, and maybe the midground guys are this value, and the background is this value. Again, trying to think of it in basically 3 value ranges, and what are they? And you could have, gradients between them, but it should be one or the other. Or you should know which range it is in. 2 and 3 are actually really similar. It just feels like 3 maybe has more darks in the background.
Yeah, I also felt they're very close. You could have pushed it a little bit further, dear Will. We expect more from you next time.
Well, he spent most of his time working on the lines, and I think that's fine.
Course. I'm joking.
I think it's a little messy right now. So I would see about, let's see. And I'm still convinced that Will's approach to colors does not need to be that realistic. I think it's more like your ink and watercolor sort of way of doing it, where you rely primarily on the lines, because the lines are so good that the lines carry the majority of what the image needs to sell, and you're using the colors to support it. I don't think that we need to get rid of these lines and turn this into a full painting. Let the colors support the lines. Kina says, do you consider inked line art to fall under the heavy blacks for this challenge? No. Heavy blacks is more about just any shadow immediately falls to black. And that's usually what I see is, okay, well, it starts getting dark and then it falls to black. And then all the background is black. And these guys are just all black. And there's no variation in the black, and it just flattens things out. And so that's kind of what I think of as heavy blacks. No, this is just a different style. This would just be a line art style that's augmented with some paints, if you want to do line art, in which I think it could work. Otherwise, getting into a painting, I don't know who did this piece, but I really just, offhand, I just really love that sort of cool lighting coming down on the gold like that over here on this reference piece. That's really nice. Pull back up. So for these, I think we need to make sure that they are standing out. Maybe it's something like they all have warm color clothes, and then most of the scene around them is cool. Or we could do your go to older. I think one of the best people for separating color schemes from like foreground and background like Chris Ron, where he separates things out like this, where okay, the foreground is cooler and darker, and the background is warmer and brighter, and that reads so well, and the values diminish as you go back, and something like that could work. This is a really good example that might get pretty close to actually kind of what you've got there. And so you could have them having more values, and you could flip flop this. So the background either gets lighter and cooler, or it gets, warm and cool could flip. It doesn't really matter. And you can even flip the light and dark so that maybe the foreground characters are mainly light, but it gets diminished as it goes back. And in the value range shortens as it gets to the dark end of the spectrum back there. Yeah, so that somewhat of approach could work as well. I would just, keep it simple. Keep it simple and keep thinking about the value ranges. This is actually a really good example. Another one by Ron. I've met him before. I worked with him on a concept art push one time. And so you have like this guy, and overall this guy exists within basically 1.5 value range, and the color changes and the hue changes, and there is light and dark within it, but the light and dark is a light and dark range of thirds of a value. So the light's like 2/3 of a value darker than the dark third, and so it reads as a whole, and it also reads within itself. And the same thing for the foreground character, and this is how you want to approach it. And you're also looking at general warm and cool patterns. Like generally this area is warmer. Generally the background is cooler. So doing even some studies or looking at some of like Ron's work and just saying, okay, well, I actually like the color and the value scheme that he used. I'm going to try adapting it. Now that's not stealing, because you're not using any of your composition. You're not using any of the character design, and it will never implement 100% the same way. So it can be a really good starting point. Or if you got something like this, and and you opened it up, and this starts applying to other people. That's why I mentioned it, not just to William. But you could get something like this, and you could shift these around, and still it keeps the same sort of dynamic between itself. Or you could come to like a color balance layer, and you can play with, okay, but what if the highlights were more like flame? And so I want to push the light so they're more warm. Then the shadows, I want them to be more violet. Preserve luminosity. I don't know why that wasn't behaving correctly. And so you can do this sort of thing, and that can even help you kind of see what it would play out as on a large scale. Right? And you can get different ideas how it could behave. And then once you find one, you go, oh man, I really like this sort of feeling right here. That's the sort of colors. And then you can use that as sort of your guide as far as how you're going to handle the overall colors and the values and stuff. And you could even sample off of it if you wanted to do your initial block in to check. Yeah. All right, well, that is all of the entries for this time. And next week, we will have the finals of Group 1. But of course, all of you guys that we've looked at this time, I probably won't be giving you any more feedback between now and the next 2 weeks. But you are, of course, free to make use of the group. And I think the group enjoys seeing progression between now and the final and get some input from people. I'm seeing a lot more people actually getting input as far as, okay, here's 3, which one do you like and why? And that's really good. It's a good way to get some quick, informed feedback. Any thoughts from you to kind of wrap up this episode, Anna?
I think we had really, really nice entries. So the first and the second group were so different and various, and it was so nice to see so many approaches on one topic. And I'm really looking forward to the 2 final weeks we are having upcoming.
And of course, if you haven't had the chance, go out to the group, join at swatches.group, and put in your suggestion for what you would like to see in an upcoming challenge. I guarantee you, we do look at them, we do consider them. We do want to do things that are a combination of what would be good for a majority of people's portfolio, what would be popular enough to fill up a whole challenge with, and what would be good as far as bringing up good elements to make for an education, right? What would be covering maybe some things that we haven't covered before in stream before. So thank you everyone for joining, and we will catch you in a week if I do not do an earlier stream because of the 5,000 members. So I will be considering that if we have an early stream, like a bonus stream, I will let you know. But until then, thank you everybody, and we will catch you next week.
Bye.